Greetings, Legionists, Loyalists, Traitors, Xenos, and other sort of entities of Warhammer 40k. This is Arndelft. So, today I just want to go ahead and reference more of my figures that I've been working on, and a little bit of a project that I'm thinking about. But first of all, I've got Chaplain Carr here as a size reference. So, here are some Guardsmen that I've made for wading through a swamp. And first Guardsman there, just holding his lasgun up above the water. Second one, got his lasgun slung sideways across his back, as you can see here, so that it's not down in the murky swamp water. As he's got his hand on a stick and he's pointing towards a possible threat or objective. And then we've got our third one here. Ooh, squeeze him in. And he's just sighting down the barrel of his gun. His base is a little bit thinner than the other two, and as you can see, it's more cut down. This middle dude here, I added to his base after trimming it down, which was especially useful for actually giving that branch that he's holding on to kind of a coming out of the water look, which is what I was going for. All of these guys are complete prototypes. I've never really worked on something like this before. It's a total experiment. Not quite sure where it's going to go. Oh, and one thing about this guy as well, as you can see, he's deeper down in the water than his two companions. I layered this up with hot glue. And with him, I had him on the layer down and stuck him on that. And, well, actually, I stuck him down into the top layer while it was still hot. So I was able to stick him down in there. And then I finished texturing with the bushes and all that after it finished drying. Well, I should say cooling down. But all of these are experiments. I'm just seeing how it goes, etc. Kind of interested in how this project proceeds. I've got a lot of mixed feedback on this, though mostly positive. But a lot of people dislike it because of the camouflage. Well, truth be told, that's what Guardsmen, in my opinion, would really, really want. They'd want camouflage. Especially these particular guys. Reason being is that they're the sort of special forces who are wading through a swamp that is considered impassable terrain by friend and foe alike. But they're risking it all so they can get in behind enemy lines and actually deal a critical blow, etc., etc., etc. I call them the Acreander Legionist veterans. Acreander is the world they're from. But in any case, these guys, where I'm planning on going with them, I do plan on finishing out a squad of them at least. One person had a very interesting thought where I would have them fighting like some sort of beast or Terran or something bursting out of the water at them. I've got different ideas for that. And I actually recently found some old StarCraft figures that I'm never really planning on using. Go ahead and get these guys out of here and make room for this. A couple of what you can tell are Zerglings. And I'm thinking about modding one of them to be bursting out of the water to be attacking one of them while he's trying to use his bayonet to skewer it, or maybe already has. Just a thought process. I have had a lot of people suggest to me to use Epoxy Resin because it's a more accurate look on water. And I have looked up some videos on Epoxy Resin, and while yes, there's a lot more possibilities to use with Epoxy Resin, the biggest problem I see with it is control. As you can see with this hot glue, I layered it up and up and up, and I was able to control where it went. Epoxy Resin is a very fluid state, much more so than the hot glue was. And I'm not sure how I would get the look that I'm going for right now, where the Guardsmen are approximately as tall as they normally would be if they had legs. They might be a little bit shorter, but still, it helps with the line of sight. I could not make Epoxy Resin this tall, in my opinion, without trying to pull off some serious tricks. I just don't see it in the cards. So I'm still working on that as a possibility. Problem is, I still haven't managed to get any epoxy resin so I can start experimenting with it and doing prototypes and whatnot. So I'm still working through the kinks on that. But for now, the hot glue, in my opinion, is novel. It works. I like it. And I plan on doing many more Guardsmen this way. At least a full squad. Oh, that is in the works. Now, my second project here that I'm working on is one I definitely need some feedback on, because I don't know the actual size of an Eldar biker, and I'm using a couple of my older StarCraft models that I found, Protoss this time instead of Zerg, to try and create an Eldar biker. And it's not glued together. Oh, bugger. It just fell apart. It's not glued together yet. So, everything's still kind of in motion. Kind of hard to keep everything still together. But that is my first concept of an Eldar biker. The bottom piece is a... let's see, how do I move this thing? I got an idea. The bottom piece is a carrier. The top is an Arbiter. And as you can see, that's an actual Eldar mounted on the back. But here we go. Give it to me. Wow. Now you get a little bit of a better concept of the carrier. But yeah, totally think it would work great for an Eldar jet bike. And I've been pondering, is this the right size? Does it look good? Etc. Of course, the units are very yellow. Of course, they'll be painted when I actually do them. But I'm just wondering what people think of this. Is this about the right size for an Eldar jet bike? Because honestly, I think it looks very different. I think it looks awesome. And it's very, very ironical to me that in StarCraft, the Protoss were a ripoff of the Eldar. It's extremely ironic to me that I am now scrapping Protoss figures, which were a ripoff of the Eldar, for Eldar. That is just the strangest type of scrapping ever. But in any case, I really like where this project's going. I really like how these two models look together. As you can see, yeah, I haven't glued them together yet because I'm still formulating how I want everything to look, and I haven't put the backpack on this particular Eldar yet. But things are kind of in flux right now, and working things out. But the carrier is the main body of the bike, and the Arbiter, this upper piece here, is the steering console / maybe guns, when I put some guns on there, maybe. Just, all of these are just ideas I'm generating right now. And I'd truly love to get people's feedback on this. Me, I love the way it looks. I think it looks very sleek, very Eldar. I'm really into the concept, and I plan on going further with the project. I'm going to need to definitely look around to get some bits for Eldar bikers, maybe, at least for the guns. I haven't even done quite enough research yet to know how many different gun options Eldar bikers even have. I'm going to have to see on that. But, this is really fun experimentation for me. As soon as I started pulling out all my all my old StarCraft figures from a board game, which has been sitting around for an age, that was one of the first ideas that occurred to me. So another thing that's got my attention here is this battlecruiser here. Old Terran battlecruiser. And in my mind, I'm trying to think, what can I use this for? Because all these models are really small. And I thought, well, maybe a Tau gun drone. Well, the problem with that is it's too big for that. So I've been continuing to ponder, and then I got the idea to use another model, which is also too small to be used for anything else, and that is the siege tank. And I just kind of stick it on top there. Let's see, maybe a little bit, but there we go. It's a little bit better, I suppose. And I thought hovering thunder cannon. Of course, it wouldn't actually have the bonuses of a hover. It would still be just a thunder cannon moving as regular as a thunder cannon would. But the concept is like so awesomely out there that thus far I'm pretty into it. So feedback on this, like it, dislike it, tweaking, modding, what do you think? So, and I think it's approximately the right size for a Thunderfire cannon. But also need some feedback on that because I don't have one. Okay. Something somebody suggested to me recently that I absolutely love the idea of. And where is that base? Let me grab the base. Alright, I'm going to stick this right here next to Chaplain Carr. Then I'm going to stick this on top of it. And that, someone suggested to me, hey, make that the legs for a tech marine or something like that. And it blew my mind. The concept just is so freaking awesome. It's a it's a quadruple-legged lower mechanical torso. And the ironical part of this is this also being a Protoss unit. It's a Dragoon, which is their ripped-off version of a Dreadnought or a Wraith Lord, or just, something like that. A warrior of the Protoss would become too injured, and they'd inter them inside of this Dragoon, where, they would then be able to serve again. Very similar to the Dreadnought concepts. And, now it's going to be able to serve as the legs for a Tech Marine or whatever else I'm going to be able to use it for. And it's, like, perfectly the right size. I mean, that base is slightly taller than the 25mm base Chaplain Carr is standing on, which is why I suppose, it's slightly taller than his particular base is. So, I don't know. These are just ideas that I'm tossing around, and I'm really liking this one. Only problem is, now I need to get a hold of a Tech Marine's torso, or make one from scrap, which would be an entirely different project altogether, or I can just mount this thing on whatever I freaking feel like mounting it on. Well, actually mount just a random Space Marine's base onto it and make him some kind of hero of the Imperium who has a mechanical base. So, all in all, I'm tossing around a few different ideas, and I've got, this to me is like, I love scrapping, I love modding, I love just doing this kind of stuff. To me, this is my favorite part of the hobby. And once I get good at painting, I'll actually be able to complete figures and models and armies, instead of relying on other people to do that. Because, to me, this is something I bend my time into to have fun. To have to pay somebody else to do it, because I suck at painting, well, sucks. So, and XL Pudding, unfortunately, has a whole backlog of his army that he's working on that currently is going a grand total of nowhere. So, give me that. Well, I can't say it's going nowhere. He's actually making some great progress. He's making some great progress. Though, his girlfriend just completely painted a Lord of Skulls. Or, whatever they call that giant monstrosity that just completely decimated my army in our last game. Which makes me sad just to think about it. Because my freaking knight, got blown to Kingdom Come by one squad of Chaos Space Marines in melee combat. What the frag? And his Lord of Skulls is just like, la-di-da-di-da-di-da. I'm just going to rip through entire armies. So, at this point, I'm not thinking very highly of the knight. Alright, so, next stop. We have here the Ultralisk, who I'm thinking might be able to make some kind of Tyrannid. Plus, I have more Zerglings and other crap like that. So, maybe a demon. Maybe that thing could make some kind of demon. I don't know. These are all just thought processes. Okay. Next up is the Guardian. And mind you, these are complete rip-offs of Tyrannids. So, it's once again extremely ironical to be able to use them as Tyrannids as a possibility. Or maybe just as demons, because honestly they look demonic in some ways. So, thought processes. Okay, our next up is the Protoss Reaver. So this is an automated unit, artificial intelligence. It's, well, basic artificial intelligence, not full-blown. But when it comes to rip-offs, it's not directly ripped off from anything Eldar, or for that matter, as I can think about it, anything else except maybe Mechanicum, possibly, it was ripped off from. I don't know. I'd have to go back and do research for when Blizzard first offered to do a video game for Games Workshop, and they said no. And that's when they ripped off Warhammer 40k completely and created StarCraft from it, and most of their units were in some way rip-offs. I don't even know if the Mechanicum was around back then when that first happened, so the Reaver might have been an actual original idea from them. But in any case, this little bugger might be able to pass off as some kind of Tyrannid, because he does have that really bug-like, flesh-like look. I don't know. Still a thought process. He's really small, kind of short, so still figuring that one out. Most of the other units, I mean, that's a Terran Marine. He was supposed to be a ripoff of, you know, Space Marines. And these particular models are just way too short to be able to be useful in any way. So I'm still trying to figure out if I can even use them. Next up, we have the Hydralisk. Once again, ripped off from the Tyranids. This little bugger, though, is rather quite interesting. Sort of reminds me of either a Lictor or... what is that other one's name? I don't think it's called a Ravener. Because that just sounds like the Inquisitor. I don't know, the one that burrows through the ground and spews crap at people. I forget exactly what the thing's called, but it heavily reminds me of the Hydralisk here, because that's exactly what that sucker does. So, but in any case, I don't think it would be large enough to actually pass off as one of those, but it's a thought process. You know, I need to actually get a size comparison for how big all these Tyrannid units are, because I could, you know, get a Tyrannid army modded, you know, looks like frickin' Zerg. That'd be awesome. And then next up, we've got this sucker. That is a bugger. What do they call that sucker? It's what are you? You are... you know, I forget what the stupid thing's name is, but it was basically like the queen of the ground. It would fragging just spew this red crap all over your base, and it would hurt, and I don't know what it can be used for Tyrannid-wise or anything else-wise, so it's still just a thought process. Don't know. Now, the actual queen of the air. I don't know what I could use this sucker for. Maybe it could pass off as some kind of demon. Could maybe pass off as some kind of drone for the Tau. I sort of like that idea. A lot of these flying units might be able to pass off as that. Ooh. And this one especially. There's a lot of Tyranids it might be able to pass off for. There is a lot of, what do they call those things? Demons maybe it could pass off for. Still figuring that one out. But the next thing I actually wanted to go ahead and showcase, still in the package, I hear all the plastic in the background, is an Arbiter still on its base. Before, you only saw the Arbiter mounted on top of the carrier as the front part of the bike. But this is what the Arbiter would normally look like on its base. And in case the Eldar bikes doesn't work out, or I don't have enough carriers as the main body of the bikes or whatever, this thing looks like it would be an awesome, like, something or other for, like, a pedestal for a, what do you call the dang thing? Some figure to be mounted on top of. Because a lot of figures go riding into combat on some sort of disc or chariot or whatever, while this thing isn't big enough to be a chariot or something like that, technically speaking, and might actually be able to pass off as one. It could definitely just be some sort of pedestal or whatever, a disc. It's the thing on top of it's flying into combat. So that's a thought process. Okay, and here we go. I also want to go ahead and show off a carrier without the Arbiter on top of it. So that's just a regular old carrier, just without anything on top, and that's what I'll be using for the main body of the bike. You know, if that idea ends up panning out, which I think it has a lot of merit. I love the idea. And, oh, come on. Okay, there was one more Protoss unit I'm looking for. Oh, duh, right in front of me. Okay, so I'm thinking this sucker might be able to pass off as a Tau gun drone. He's flying up in the air. He's approximately the right size. I think he could do that, and this is a scout from the Eldar. And it actually does look a little bit similar to some of the Eldar's flying units. So, kind of big on that idea. Okay, another unit here that is just too small to be used for anything pretty much conventional is the Goliath. A relatively large battle suit that has a guy up there in the cockpit. They didn't make it size comparable to the Marines because the men inside those suits are not actually all that small by comparison to, well, in other words, they're not these tiny little things inside this giant battle suit. The guy inside is only a little bit smaller than the suit itself. So, you get what I'm saying. In other words, this thing is not comparable to, like, this fire bat here. Because inside that cockpit is where a guy is supposed to be. So, they made these two completely non-comparable. But then again, that happens. If they made them actually properly sized, that Goliath would be so much bigger, so much cooler, and I could probably use it for something. Which would be absolutely awesome. Not to mention the battle cruiser were properly sized, and the siege tank. Oh, so much stuff would be so cool. Okay, now something else I was thinking about Terran-wise is the science vessel. Totally could pass off as like a shield drone. I mean, look at that thing. Looks, it looks like a drone. It could totally pass off as that. And I am personally very big on that idea. I mean, it's legit. I would 100% go for that. So it's a thought process. I don't myself play Tau, but XL Pudding does. So you could definitely use with some more drones. I mean, he's got a lot of regular drones, but he needs some gun drones. And this thing would be more of a shield drone. I don't know enough about drones to even be talking about this, so whatever. Okay. Now, besides that, I've pretty much covered everything that I plan on modding, changing, or whatever. The last thing that I've got up, though, is XL Pudding just recently gave back to me a couple of Assault Marines I gave to him because they were made of pewter, as you can see, and they had regular unhelmeted heads. And me, I'm a realist. Your guy goes into combat, he should be wearing a freaking helmet. And XL Pudding, and being the awesome guy he was like, hey, I'm going to chop these guys' heads off using my sprue cutter. And so, he did that. And now he's giving them back to me. It just so happens that I happen to have their original backpacks to go with them that I've been stripping down. He's used rubbing alcohol on the figures that he's been stripping down, which, as you can see, is more effective than the purple power that I've been using on these backpacks to strip them down. So I'm thinking I need to get me some rubbing alcohol, which, when I say it like that, sounds really wrong and dirty, which is not how I meant it. So just forget about that. Anyways, so I'm kind of wondering what weapons to put on these guys. And not rightly sure. I mean, this guy's still got what's left of a chainsword by the looks of it there. So, thing is, chainsword, it looks like he was holding, looks like it was fragging huge. And when I first got him, he didn't have that before I gave it to XL Pudding. He did not have the rest of that chainsword, so it was never there. So right now I'm considering trying to find a way to complete that chainsword, which would be like the size of a huge freaking eviscerator. Just thought process I'm tossing around. I've currently already got 2 Assault Marine eviscerators, though one of them's a sergeant with a combat shield. But yeah, having a third one I suppose wouldn't be a bad thing. Especially since one's a sergeant, so that's basically one squad there. And so I could have a second squad with an eviscerator regular guy. So, figuring that out. We'll see. Anyways. But I'm just pondering what to do with these dudes. As well, XL Pudding's the one who did the paint job on Chaplain Carr here. And he did a friggin' bang-up job. I mean, the only error is a little bit of purple on his golden pauldron there. That's like the only problem on the entire thing. And considering how horrible my paint jobs are when I try to make detailed figures like this, it's terrible. Now, here is a spare backpack that I have, and I'm thinking about magnetizing it and magnetizing Car, which will be difficult because he's made of pewter, but it's doable, and sticking that whole gig together. And as you can see, purple power, once again, not very effective, especially on this poor resin assault jump pack. So yeah, I think I might be able to just, prime it. It might still look good. Right now, it looks fragging awful. Makes me want to cry. But, I can touch it up. It'll be good. No problem. Now for Car, that's where the main problem lies. Because magnetizing his backpack and all that, great. I just worry about the backpack. And when I magnetize units, the parts are supposed to be interchangeable. But then you can't particularly make those parts interchangeable with other characters or whatnot that have different kinds of paint jobs, because then that particular part stands out like freaking crazy, so you got to give them all the exact same paint job. So, which for regular people who all paint their own armies, there's no problem there. Or pay someone to do it, etc., etc., etc. Legionist, my faction, mimics the paint jobs of other factions. Or, once in a while, like with Car, he was a pure experiment. I just told Exo Pudding, paint him however you like. And I love the paint job he did. But, I just wanted something random. But at this point, kind of wondering how I'm going to want that backpack painted. Sometimes, on particular Marines, I've seen one part of them painted a different way than the rest of them, like completely different, and it's a part that's actually glued onto them. It's not interchangeable. So maybe I'm going to go for that look. Don't know. We'll see. But that's just a project for the future. Thought process, food for thought, etc. And that pretty much sums up everything that I have been working on recently. So if you have any ideas, thought processes, food for thought that you'd like to toss my way, I'd love to hear them in the comment section below. That's pretty much, when I stall out, hearing other people's ideas, one way or the other, usually can get me going again in this, generating ideas of my own. Or for that matter, a good deal of the time, using your ideas. I mean, the whole quadruped using the four-legged dragoon for bottom torso was not my idea. I got that from somebody else. Wish I could remember who so I could credit them. But yeah, it was absolutely awesome. I love that idea. But in any case, I am going to go ahead and call that good for now. So as I said, feedback below, comments, love to hear from you. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you dislike this video, please tell me why. In any case, don't y'all get into too much trouble or do. It's always up to you. Toodles!